It's a brand new episode of 5 Unscripted. Welcome. It is Kea Boya here from 5 Weekend Afternoons, and I am sitting with 2AM, who is a singer and a songwriter. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah. I can't do no small talk, no small talk. I'm not with the small talk. Can't be with the small talk.
So usually when I sit down and have conversations with artists, particularly R&B artists, because like you can be a rapper, you can, do whatever.
Yeah.
But like at what point did you find out that you can sing?
I was very young. I think I was about 8 years old when I appeared on an album. It was a gospel album for church. I used to sing in church a lot. My father was head of music at every church that we went to. So I've always been exposed to music. And naturally, you try yourself out. And I happen to be good at it.
That's really interesting. It's also really interesting how a lot of people in the industry started their career in church.
Yeah. Especially here in South Africa. There's really good music at church. And the theory might not be as well, taught in church. But in terms of improvisation, they take it to another level.
I love that. And I also am interested in finding out, like, in terms of your songwriting, right?
Yes.
Because I've heard a lot of people say that kind of stemmed from when they were in high school doing English. And for you, what was it? Did it start off as journaling? Or were you just like how did that come about?
The first song I ever wrote, I was 12 years old.
What was it about?
My best friend at the time had just passed away.
Oh.
And there was a piano at home, and I don't even know what it was, but I just went to the piano. I actually composed the song and I wrote it as well. And it was just an outlet, to deal with the grief that it was new to me. Grief was new to me. So it just naturally became an outlet, an emotional outlet, a coping mechanism. And it just evolved from there. But I do remember that was the first song that I ever wrote, and it nothing prompted me. It was all just, I don't know, intuitive.
So it was a form of you journaling what you were feeling, and it kind of was expressed through song.
Yes, exactly.
That's absolutely beautiful. Wow.
Yeah.
And you recently have just released your EP, Close Enough.
Yes.
And what are the themes around the EP that you've made?
It's a journey on, I touch on quite a few topics, mainly taking accountability for the type of partner that I may have been in the past.
Yeah.
And also just growing and evolving and really knowing the type of partner that I want to become. So I start that album with taking accountability from the past, a few entanglements, and then just what I've learned and what I hope to apply moving forward.
That's beautiful. And within the process of like creating the music, right? Because I'm interested in the period and the length that it takes to make the music that you make. Like, is it like you wake up one day and you're like, there's a song in my heart, I'm going to go to the studio and record it? Or is it a process that takes like a year? What is the process like?
I think an advantage of being independent is that there's no one on my case telling me to release music. So everything really just flows. If I have something that pops into my head, I'm able to lay it down. And eventually it evolves into something that sounds like a project. And then that's when you get more specific. That's when I start, the track listing and thinking about, okay, maybe I need this type of song here, this type of song here. There are some magical moments in studio where you just get in one or two takes and you just know that this song is going to be on my next project. There are other songs that you sit on for a while. You add different elements to it. But the most important, I think, aspect of making an album is just taking your time.
Yeah.
Take your time, sit with the music, see how the music grows on you first.
Yeah.
And then, start getting feedback from other people, and then you can sort of have a good idea of what works, what doesn't, and how you want it to sound.
So you have to have a vision. Like, once you've expressed the music, you kind of have to have a vision in terms of where you want to see the project going.
Yes. And I don't know, your creativity will guide you. You don't have to overthink much when creating. Your creativity guides you. So this Prost EP, to answer your question, took about, there are some songs that are about 2 years old. There are some songs that were written and recorded 6 months prior to release. So yeah, and I think that's how it becomes a journey, because you're writing through different phases of your life. You're writing through different experiences. You see things, you learn things, you notice things. And those are all expressed over a period of time, and that creates the journey.
Yeah.
That is the EP.
That's beautiful. R&B is a fairly new genre in South Africa.
Yeah.
And I would like to know what your stance is on the R&B scene in South Africa. Like, do you think there is potential for it to grow? Do you think there is enough recognition for R&B artists within the industry as well?
I think it's a tricky situation in South Africa because we are very dance oriented when it comes to music. So I do think that R&B does get overlooked. However, I do believe that South Africans are able to appreciate good music regardless of genre. And that's why you do see the industry growing. You do see that particular genre growing. And you with, the different avenues that people are able to release music these days, you are able to reach your audience in new ways that weren't available to people before. So I think that the position that we're currently in has a lot of potential for growth. There's a lot of room for new ideas, new artists, and a lot of improvement as well.
Yeah. And speaking about different avenues of consuming music, like 10, 15 years ago, we had traditional media, right? Like your radio, your TV as a means of getting music. Like the first track that was released, everybody wanted it to be on radio. How do you think over time the consumption of music has evolved? And do you think traditional media and digital media are like mutually exclusive, or are they to be kept separate because they're not the same thing?
Well, I think with the evolution of technology, with the advancement of technology, it's bound to create new ways of doing things. And that's across any industry, regardless of what you do. And I think so it follows that in music, there have been major developments in terms of how to distribute your music, even before you distribute it, in terms of how to make your music.
Yeah.
I remember, as I said, when I was very young, recording for that gospel CD in my dad's studio, everything was analog.
Yes.
And now he was even amazed that we are able to record and upload and distribute from a laptop.
Yeah.
The equipment, everything has become digitalized.
Yeah.
So even making your music is a lot easier. And with streaming platforms becoming so prominent and, South Africa slowly catching up just in terms of the digital consumption, I think earlier South Africans weren't really consuming music digitally to begin with. Radio was still prominent, CDs were still prominent, but as we advance, you are seeing a lot of artists actually become popular off of the internet, which wasn't something that used to happen in South Africa.
Yes.
Aries, for example, has created a cult following just off of the internet. And a lot of people are able to garner a lot of momentum and gain a lot of loyal fans and build their fan base just off of the internet. However, I do think that in order to reach a certain height, just in terms of your recognition, you do have to make use of the traditional distribution avenues like radio, because I just think that they still broadcast your content to a much wider range of people.
Absolutely. And it introduces you to a new audience that you probably, didn't have.
Yes, exactly.
And speaking about, the likes of Aries having a cult following off of social media, I think in the entertainment industry, there's this conversation around clout versus talent, right? So there are people that have a lot of people that appreciate them, but are they really talented? right? That's a conversation. And I think even within our industry, it's just like, but like, why is it that A, B, and C is on radio simply because they have a cult following, as opposed to somebody that is really really talented in what they do? In your opinion, would you say it's the same thing with the R&B scene? Because like you have, Elaine obviously is the first big artist to get to a level where, she is international but solely by making R&B. And you have the likes of Joda Khosi and, things like that. Do you think that just by observation, it's a thing of there are people that have clouds, but talent shaky?
Look, I think particularly R&B, it's very hard to become popular if you aren't talented, just because of what goes into making R&B music. And I think that recognition in R&B does come because people recognize the raw talent that is there. So with R&B in particular, I do think that to get to those heights and, get those high streaming numbers, it does require a very basic level of talent. And I think another aspect that is unique to South Africa is just lack of access to resources. I think if you do look at the likes of Elaine, you can tell that it was a very well thought out, well funded marketing, very well marketed project, which contributed to the success of it. And I think that lack of access to resources and artist development is one of the major issues that prevents R&B from evolving and becoming a genre that is a force to be reckoned with within the South African music industry. Because if you look at other genres like amapiano or house music, people are able to make a lot of income because everyone at a gig wants to hear that type of music.
Yes.
So even as a DJ, you will get those gigs. I rarely ever see any R&B events or R&B acts. It's mainly hip hop or amapiano. So there aren't many platforms, and I think that does speak to the lack of access to resources and the development in the genre itself just isn't there. There isn't anyone driving R&B music the way that it could be driven.
Yeah. But do you think it's something that in future could be potentially grow? It could potentially grow into, there being actual events that celebrate R&B / alternative artists.
I genuinely believe that that's a gap in the market that does need to be explored, because people can appreciate R&B music. People listen to R&B music. There are a few, artists who are really garnering a really decent amount of streams. And so I think that it would help if there were people trying to grow the industry or the genre in that way, because there is a lot of potential for growth, because people are clearly consuming the music, so the market is there. It's just about creating the platforms for people to be able to consume it. Yeah.
And speaking about streams, you are on a road to 1 million streams, right?
Yes.
And you've just hit 800K followers. Now, my thing is, and I think this brings me back again to the conversation of having a cult following. Like, I've consumed your music and you're incredibly talented. And I'm like, how is this gent not international? Like, how is it that there isn't, in as much as you make good music and there are people that are consuming the music that you make, but in terms of like your name as 2AM being like, this is 2AM, I don't know what the math is there, but like I need to be enlightened in that regard. Like, what do you think it is? And I imagine that there are also a lot of artists that do have great following, but like in terms of like being prominent household names, particularly within the genres that they make music in, it's a very tricky situation. Like, what do you think? Where do you think that the disconnect is?
Well, funny enough, most of my streams actually originate from America.
That makes sense.
And I think that does speak to the type of genre that R&B is. It is a very Western genre. And I've heard people say that in order to succeed in the South African music, you do have to Africanize
your sound,
what you're doing and your sound. I'm not sure if I agree with that, because as you can see with Elaine, it's a very Western, project. And she was able to reach those heights. So I think the genre itself does lend itself to a more international audience, which is why the local uptake does take a while. And there is a tendency to, for the local audience to only really hop on to your music when they see that you're being recognized internationally as well. So with me, a lot of my streams do come from the United States, the UK, with I think South Africa being my third highest numbers. So yeah, I think it does have to do with the genre itself.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think it speaks to the audience that you're trying to reach, and like you're saying that it's a very Western sound.
Yes.
So but when you think about like R&B as a whole and alternative, like what do you hope it's going to do within South Africa, or where do you hope to see it in South Africa?
In South Africa, I really do believe in the genre. I really do believe that there are many talented vocalists, many talented producers, many talented people who are very good at making this music. Who just need an extra push, whether it be, as I said, development, whether it be resources, whether it be distribution avenues. There are many ways to get the genre there, and I do hope one day to see, R&B festivals here in South Africa. I do hope to see, more R&B centered performances, more R&B centered events. Because I think that would go. I mean, South African hip hop have their own awards, the South African Hip Hop Awards. So I do think that some institutions can be, created to sort of give the genre itself some credibility and some backing, just institutionally, in order to catapult the genre to newer heights.
Speaking of like having spaces that celebrate the R&B genre, I'm thinking about the Amapiano and for it to be where it is right now. And I really think that there has been a lot of collaboration. So you'd find that maybe Maporesa was the first, and then Maporesa put Kabza on, and then Kabza put Foka on. Do you think maybe that is what is missing within the R&B genre, where it's just individuals making their own music and there isn't that much collaboration within the space?
Yes, I do. I think I'm guilty of that myself. I don't necessarily collaborate a lot, which is something that I do plan to change moving forward. But there are, a few people. I do know that the Pretoria music scene, they collaborate all the time with each other. And you can see the difference that it makes just in terms of how prominent they are. Whether it be hip hop or R&B, they do show up and support one another. And I think that's something that's missing more in the Joburg scene and in other areas. There is definitely a lack of collaboration. I'm not sure why that is. But there is definitely a lack of collaboration, yes. Yeah,
I'm hearing that. Okay, we're about to conclude the interview, but I really want to know, 5 years from now, where do you see the 2AM brand? Where do you see the music that you make and the R&B scene in South Africa as a whole?
I love making music, so I really do want to see my music being played in the biggest stages in the world. However, I would like to get involved more behind the scenes eventually.
Okay.
What I was talking about in terms of artist development, what I was talking about in terms of creating the platforms for the R&B genre to grow, and creating avenues for people to consume R&B music here in South Africa. I don't see much happening in that space. I don't see much innovation or creativity. And so I would like to get involved behind the scenes to make things happen, not only for myself as an artist, but for other artists and the genre as a whole.
I mean, somebody has to be a thought leader and take, the lead. So I think it would be absolutely interesting, because I don't think that, one thing that I've noticed, like sometimes as a creative, you just focus on the art, but when you are open to the gaps that are within the market, like if you had to curate festivals or like events that actually, celebrate alternative artists, that celebrate R&B artists, I think that is something that is like, it takes somebody that is not just into the creative part of making music to see that there actually is a gap and an opportunity to grow the genre, and to also give access to people that are passionate about this. Like you said, that there is a lack of resources and people don't have the means to, you know, make good quality music. They could be very talented, but there just isn't a place, or maybe they don't know of spaces where they can be like, actually, you know, 2AM has created a platform where I can do A, B, and C. He can link me with a producer and like take it from there.
Exactly. So yeah, please watch this space. There will be more to come regarding that. There are people that I work with. My engineer, he's the head of a label, FTL Radio, and we've already started doing that on a small scale. Finding artists that are talented, that want to work, and just lending our resources to them, using my platform and the other artists that are around us to really, you know, give them that jump start and catapult them in their musical journey. And most of these artists are R&B artists, alternative artists. So I'm not just talking. We are doing it, but on a very small scale, given, you know, the resources that we have. But eventually we hope to grow it to become something that is a household name when you talk about R&B music in South Africa. And hopefully, you know, it'll work out, and we will give a lot of talented R&B artists in the country the platform and the resources that they need to develop into the artists that, you know, they want to become.
I absolutely love that, and I wish you all the best, man, with your journey, with your music, with the aspirations that you have in the music scene. I really wish you nothing but success, and I think it's gonna happen.
Thank you.
Watch the space. It is 2AM. Make sure you follow him and stream his music as well, and don't forget to download the 5FM app. Always representing 5FM. Till we meet again, have a fantastic one. Mwah.
Yeah, I can't do no small talk, no small talk. I'm not with the small talk. Can't be with the small talk.